All right. Hey, we're going to get started as soon as Kick shuts up. As soon as Kix is done talking, we will start. Hey, I'm going to try not to yell too much. Can you guys hear me over there if I'm talking at this level? Okay. This is a little bit louder environment than we normally teach in, being that it is a restaurant that has patrons. So I'm going to try to tone it down a little bit, but not too much. But if you can't hear me, please just let me know by doing this, and I'll speak up more. You can't hear me? I have a hard time. Really? Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm just going to talk to these guys during this class because they are the only ones that cannot hear. Turn off your tinnitus. Do whatever you got to do so we can do this, okay? So tonight we're going to talk about humility, which is a huge aspect. I didn't want to teach this class, but I think everybody knows I'm the most humblest guy. So being the best, knowing that I'm the best at humbleness, I was picked to teach this class, which is great, okay? Now, being humble is not thinking less of yourself. It is not a lack of confidence. It is thinking about yourself less. Okay. So we're going to go through this because being a maverick, you have to be confident in who you are, and confidence and power often go hand in hand, but they are not the removal of humility. You have to be humble, but at the same time, be confident in what you do. Now, coming from the Marine Corps, Marines are not confident. They're just arrogant. Okay. And so, but it's required for what they do, for what we do out in the civilian world and on a daily basis with the interactions with loved ones and business partners. Arrogance doesn't do it. There has to be that humility and balancing that with confidence. So we're going to talk about that as we get through this class today. All right. So humility strengthens relationships, right? Because everybody's been in those relationships where they always have the person who's the one-upper, the person who knows better. My son he's 10 years old. He's absolutely a one-upper. If you tell him any cool experience you've ever had, he's had a better one. Like I climbed Mount Fuji. I took my son with him, but he went higher than I did, apparently, even though we all made it to the top. Just ask him. We all have those. And those are walls that get built in relationships when people let that line between confidence and humility get blurred. And they push that boundary to where now they are alienating relationships. And people do this at home with their spouses. I've, believe it or not, been accused of it. I know, as humble as I am, I've been accused of it before where my wife's like, sometimes you come off arrogant because I'll see something, I'll be like, I could do it better. But that's just me. That's my mentality. Like I want to do everything to the best of my ability. And so sometimes when I am doing my mental workup where I can do that better, that comes from my time in the Marine Corps, but it doesn't fly everywhere, right? So it is something that is important in relationships. It fosters growth by in your team and in the people that you work around by humbling yourself to ask them their opinion. Okay. Here's my biggest tool that keeps me humble is I am a forever learner. I soak up audiobooks. I soak up podcasts. I read books because if I continue to learn and I walk into the day and I learn something new that day, then obviously I don't know everything. But I have to foster that mentality to continue to learn because the second I master everything, I have built a wall between myself and humility. I cannot be humble if I know everything. But when I can recognize that I don't know everything, which is for some people, in some situations, is a concerted effort. You have to mentally tell yourself, I am going to learn, or I learned something, so that you can keep that humility in check. Keep that ego and that arrogance in check. Because it's very easy, especially in leadership roles within companies or as the owner of a company, where you have an idea of how you want things done and how action should be taken because it is your company, you built it. This is your team, you lead them. It is very easy to say, this is the way happens. And this is going to be the way it goes, the way that we move forward. But when you do that and you never take anybody else's opinion, or you never rethink how you're doing something, you're not willing to learn, then you start to build those walls in those relationships. And you start to create that divide. And sometimes you can come back from it. Sometimes it is as simple as like, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I had to learn that late in my career, where I would interact with someone and they would get the anger that I had built up from 2-3 interactions ago, 2-3 problems ago. And I'd have to grab them like, hey, I'm sorry, that wasn't directed at you. But I'll tell you who it was directed at, name by name, you know? And I had to reel that in to realize like my interactions with people, every interaction I have is an impact to them, good or bad. And when I can reel that in and take those as learning opportunities, then I'm keeping that humility in check. I'm keeping that arrogance at bay, and I'm able to continue to learn and develop those things. But it is a concerted effort. It prevents complacency. That's where the learning comes in. Because I've seen it time and time again where leaders in positions have been doing it for 10, 15 years and know the best way to do something. But thankfully, technology advances and things get better, but leaders don't always take that in stride and don't always adapt to move with it, right? I mean, thank God we are no longer doing handwritten invoices or typed invoices for what we do, right? Thank God I no longer have to lick stamps to send correspondence. I can send an email. I can send a text message. But there are people who in leadership roles and in procedures within their company have adapted to some of those things that everybody's got, but aren't willing to humble themselves enough to listen to maybe we do this step first because it will save us time on the back end, right? Or maybe we close down shop this way so that we're ready for the morning rather than bringing everybody in an hour early to get everything ready for the day. We just leave 30 minutes later and we put the stuff where it goes, right? And so being open to those new procedures and new ideas, and it's as simple as, hey, here's the plan. What do you think? And they say what they think, and we've talked about this before. It may be the worst idea, especially coming from Kicks. It may be the worst idea. And if it is, great. I learned that he has no idea what he's doing. And I need to put some time and effort into training him. Right? But if it is a great idea, then maybe I learned something. And that puts, like, I always think of green weights and red weights, right? As I walk through the day, I have good things that happen and bad things that happen. And I can put that scale in motion on many different aspects of my life. My confidence and humility can sit on that scale. And whenever I have one of those moments where he's like, that's a good idea. I just learned something from him. Did everybody hear what he said? Let me put a green weight because I just kept my humility where it's supposed to be. Rather than, and every time I walk around and I tell people, no, we're going to do it my way, I'm putting a red weight in there. And so how I balance those things on a daily basis determines how successful I am as an organization, in my relationships with people, because some of those things are easy to fix on the back end, right? It may be easy for me to be like, wait, that was a bad idea, but I can still get this deal closed. That's a little more difficult on an individual level when I start dealing with egos and I can't control my ego and now I'm harming relationships, right? All right. How is humility achieved? Self-awareness. We talk about it all the time. This is that reflection at the end of your day, at the beginning of your day, wherever you put that reflection time to where you sit down and you analyze those interactions with people you had the day before or the interactions you had with people today, the decisions you made, because those are all learning opportunities. They are chances for you to say, that worked. Why did that work? Okay, because I brought my team in. And it worked and we got better together. Or that didn't work. Why? Well, because I thought I knew the best answer. When really, I have a supervisor that does that for a reason, that I'm paying to come do that every day. And I left them out of the equation, right? Because that happens, right? Sometimes we get so busy that the person that we are paying to do a specific job never weighs in on how that job should be done. You know, we hire managers like here. We have bar managers. It's real easy for me to go be like, we need to order this vodka because that's what I like. Rather than being like, hey, bartender, what do you think? Oh, nobody else drinks that? That's just me because I'm dumb. Let's order what people want. Let's do the things that make sense and take into account those decisions, right? Because I know coming here, I look at all those beers up there, and I don't drink anymore, but I used to love it, right? And I would look at all those beers up there. I'm like, I bet that's good. I used to love that. I never thought Michelob Ultra was going to sell so well. That never was a thought to me. I've never had a Michelob Ultra because it's Michelob Ultra. It's 64 calories. There's nothing in that I want, right? And so those things that I've written off are some of the most popular things because I don't know everything, right? Just because I have an expertise in something doesn't mean I have an expertise in everything. Commitment to learning. We've already touched on this, but it is something that you can build into your schedule. And if you want to create a commitment to learning to help with your humility, the easiest thing you can do is schedule it. Put it on your calendar. Yes. Absolutely. So point 3, practicing gratitude, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like they're as related as they really are. But just imagine this. If you walk around and you are grateful for the things and you tell people, thank you for doing that, you are acknowledging that you didn't do that, right? And whether or not you think about it that way or not, when you say thank you or I appreciate you doing that, it means you didn't do it. And you is the center of ego, right? And so you're giving credit somewhere else, which means you're not giving it to yourself. And that builds a relationship and it keeps your humility where it's supposed to be, right? Now, embracing failure. We talk about this a lot. What is failure? It's a lesson. That's all it is. It is an opportunity for you to learn. If you look at the people who are at the top of these Fortune 500 companies, they have more failures than probably most of us in this room combined. And those failures are just lessons that they learn, opportunities to grow, and that's how they get to the top. They still have those failures. You don't own one multi-billion-dollar company and don't have other ventures that fail off on the side. Those things pop up. You invest, you see how it works. You take the lesson if it fails, and you put it back into the decision-making cycle. You have to use those failures as opportunities, not as excuses for why you don't do something later, but as an opportunity to learn. Because when you are learning, it keeps that humility in check. And serving others, okay? I am very used to eating last. It was the culture I was brought up in the Marine Corps, where if you were higher ranked than someone, literally, they call it by rank. Privates, get in line, go eat. Private first classes, lance corporals, NCOs. And it was built into the way we do it. To where now, it's hard for me to get in line. Like, even if I'm at a guest's house and they're like, hey, go get your food. I'm like, wait, did everybody else get their food? Like, someone's going to yell at me any minute now if I get in line. And so, but serving others builds your humility, right? Because it keeps that ego in check. It puts someone else in front of you. And it removes you from that equation, right? All right. What does humility look like in action? Okay. There we go. We actually took that picture this morning. It was a quick turnaround, but George made it happen. Okay. All right. Leaders who listen more than speak foster open communication, open growth. Okay. So I mentioned in this video that we had for announcing this. Maverick leaders don't just speak, but they listen. Listening, whether or not it's important for why it's happening, it's important to that relationship. And they may not have the answer right now, but if you discard people and don't listen to the people who work for you, the people who work around you, then when they have something important to tell you, when they do have the answer, they're not going to speak up. Right. You will shut that off. You miss out on so much with by intimidating. Absolutely. Giving credit. This is something that the way I have always approached this is anything I can pass off to someone else as credit to give it. Because there's going to come a day when I'm not around and I want them to continue to do what made whatever that last mission, whatever that last job was successful. I want them to do it when I'm not around. And the only way that they are going to do that if they know that some of that credit is going to go to them, right? But the less credit you take, the less ego you build. The less ego you build, the more humble you can be. And admitting mistakes, easy one, right? In theory, very easy in theory. If I'm wrong, admit it. Very hard if you have put yourself on a pedestal and you have built those walls, okay? What Chad was talking about with going up to someone and humbling himself in that situation, to me, that is like motivation. Motivation is not something I wake up with every day. Sometimes I have to fake motivation, right? When people are relying on me and I don't feel my best, sometimes I have to go fake it. And that fake motivation, that false motivation that I have to go lead those people makes me motivated. Sometimes I don't feel like being humble. Sometimes I have to fake it. I have to, all right, I am going to go be humble. And that opportunity to be humble that changes the outcome of a situation oftentimes is enough for me to be like, you know what, being humble is worth it. It's that lesson to learn. Now, I'm not saying that you can just do that forever. Because if you fake humbleness, it is more evident than true humbleness. People see it, right? Kind of like fake listening. We talked about listening last week or the week before. If you are always that person nodding, like, yeah, tell me about it. And you're answering questions with tell me about it. I hear you. You're like, do you want more coffee? I hear you, man. That becomes very evident in the way you listen. And humility is the same way. What's up, George? Okay. Seeking feedback. We already talked about this. Valuing diverse perspectives, because we know none of us knows everything. If we know everything, then you don't need to listen to this class. You're already running a multi-billion-dollar company and are the expert. Okay. If you are the master of everything, then you have nothing to learn and you are successful. If you are not running a multi-billion-dollar company and sitting here tonight, then you should be humble because you have things to learn. Because that is the goal. Okay. All right. Humility affects confidence. Okay. So humility has a big play in emotional and mental health. Okay. Because if you cannot make yourself foster humility in your own life, then that puts you in a position where you now have to have the answer for everything. You always have to be ready to go. Okay. Giving yourself the grace, the leeway to not know everything and be humble allows you to not go home with stress, to not have to have the answer in every situation, gives you the ability to delegate, to not wear that stuff everywhere you go. Because I know people who would come to work every day and they would walk through the door with a figurative empty bag on their back. And they would walk in and they would pick up this 20-pound problem here. And they'd pick up this 20-pound problem here and they would throw it in their bags and walk around all day picking up these problems because they never wanted to say, I can't deal with this. Can you take care of it right now? And next thing you know, they're walking around with a 10,000-pound pack on their back trying to accomplish the mission. That person is slower. They're worn out. All because they couldn't admit or ask for help. And when you can't ask for help, your emotional health goes down, your mental health goes down, your health goes down because you're not taking care of yourself. So humility is one of those things, like we talked about. It's like the chair that's missing a leg, whether it's a three-legged chair or a four-legged chair, doesn't matter. If it's missing a leg that's intended to be there, it's not gonna stand up. But you're gonna see those problems when they're just a little bit out of balance, right? Because I know this table here is wobbly. Something's out of balance. And George is going to fix that. I'm just kidding. All right. True confidence is secure, not boastful. Emotional, stable leaders make better decisions, foster a healthier work environment for the people that are around them. Humility can be something that raises an organization to success. Ego is something that can bring it down faster than ever. Now, those two things are on opposite spectrums, right? But just because they're on opposite spectrums doesn't mean they're on opposite scales. When you let ego take over one time, it doesn't mean that you let humility take over one time and you're back to equal. Ego can be much more damaging than humility can be repairing, right? Because what's that saying? You build 1,000 bridges and then
I don't know that one.
Okay, I'm not going to say that one. I was hoping that it was going to cue and I wouldn't have to say it on camera. But since it didn't, I'm not going to say it on camera. All right. The stress relief factor. Imagine going to work and you walk through the door and someone says, hey, I took care of that problem. Right? Or, hey, this email came in, I already responded. That's what humility builds. Humility in a workplace empowers other people to take action. Because it's little things like we talked about, like the what do you think? Or do you know how to do this? Can you take care of this for me? Because I'm too busy today. Or just saying, hey, I think you're ready for more responsibility. I'm going to give you some of mine so that I can focus out and up from the company while you focus down and in on the company. Giving that using humility, you can empower the people around you. And instead of you coming to work and everything is on you, instead of you going home and everything is on you, you've empowered those around you to take action. And next thing you know, you're going to come to work and people are going to be like, hey, you're going to be like, hey, these are the things we need to do today. And they'll be like, well, what else? Because we already did those things, right? And at that point, you're just like, you know what? You guys go take a long coffee break. I'll come up with the next actions we're going to do. Or even better, what do you guys think we need to do next? If you guys have already accomplished these things, you're obviously in the right track and in the right mindset. What else do we need to get done today? Otherwise, let's go to lunch. You know what I'm saying? But you can't do that in a world that there is no humility. Because now you have to be the end all be all. You are the one with the answers.
What would you consider the percentage of entrepreneurs that are locked into an ego-driven mindset?
A percentage. I would say 75% plus.
I agree. Do you think they will successfully scale their organizations?
No.
Why?
So, ego makes you operate like with a knife, right? If I'm fighting with a knife, it means I'm really close to the problems. And so if I'm really close to that problems, I don't get to see what's out ahead of me. I'm focused on what's right in front of me, and I will never get anywhere, right? My operation will always be right here.
It'll only be as big as what you can handle.
Yeah. My immediate sphere of influence, which is about as far as I can reach my arms, right? That is where the next problem is at. And if I'm the only one that can address problems, then that's as far as I can go. But the second I can hand some of those off and practice some humility and say, hey, I need you to deal with this right here, because I got to go get on the sniper rifle and look at this year's forecast. I got to look at the next market shift. We are about to go into spring planting in the landscape company. I need to start looking at what plants are available, what prices, and start scheduling things rather than being on this job site all day. Because if I'm the one doing it every day and all day, who's planning for the future? Who's doing payroll? Me at 10 o'clock at night still?
But being the go-to guy feels so good, right?
Oh, it does, right? But it's less, I think often in the entrepreneur world, it is not the ego that puts people in that. It is the fear, right? Because it is hard, especially as you're growing a small company, to say, I want you to take care of this. Because them taking care of that could be the difference in payroll or not payroll.
Yep.
But if you don't ever do that, you will never scale your business. You just have to have some emotional intelligence, mental intelligence, practice, planning, and successful executions to know how to make those decisions on who you can hand that off to, right? So the other thing that humility does that really screws people up is it doesn't prepare them to make emotional decisions. Who's ever heard you should take emotions out of decision making? I've heard it a ton of times, right? I've taught that. I spent years teaching that. It is wrong. Because when we say, I am going to take all of my emotion out of decision making, there is going to come a day where I cannot do that. And I have never practiced making a decision with emotion, right? So rather than removing emotion from my decision making, I need to acknowledge that emotion, put it into my decision making cycle as something I realize is there and say, I'm angry. I'll keep that in mind, but here's the right, here's the wrong, here's all the other pieces. Because time and time again, people make decisions where they've all they practice is let me remove emotion from this, but now it involves their family. They can't remove that emotion, but they've never trained themselves to make a decision with emotion present. So I completely have changed the way I think because I've seen it go wrong too many times where people try to remove that emotion and the day comes where they cannot do that and they make that decision and it is a catastrophic failure. So when you can practice humility and practice humbleness on a daily basis, you empower yourself to be able to make those decisions when you cannot remove emotion. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, actionable steps for leaders. Seek feedback on a regular basis, right? I have given lots of feedback over the years, some of it constructive, some of it destructive, but it was all learning opportunities for me. When you can go out and take feedback and sort through it, because sometimes it's going to come across as destructive feedback, right? Sometimes that instant feedback is going to hurt your ego or trigger your fight or flight. But when you can practice taking that feedback and pull out the stuff that is constructive and put that back into your decision-making cycle, into your skill set, you will continue to build that humbleness. Recognize and appreciate contributions from your team. We've already talked about that. That is something that I believe is you should put into a schedule. If you have a team meeting every week, if you once a month bring the team together, your company together to make announcements, put it in the agenda that I'm going to recognize someone. But don't take that as an opportunity for you to recognize who you want. Say, hey, supervisors, I want each of you to pick someone who was a rock star this week. Just give me a couple sentences of why, and then I want you to come and recognize them in front of the company this week. That will build that relationship with that employee, build that skill set in that supervisor, and keep your ego in check. Does that make sense? Admit mistakes openly and model accountability. That is an absolute must. Because the second you think that one of your employees doesn't see your mistake, they do. Every time. They saw that mistake. If you admit it, you put a green weight on that scale. If you cover it up or try to skip over it, it's like everybody here has probably slipped on ice at some point, right? And then you look around to see who saw it. Everybody saw it. You just made a giant move and flailed your arms. Everybody saw it. So rather than taking that time and being like, did anybody see that? Just be like, whoa, I almost ate it. You know? Or that was a close one. You know? You gain power. You not only do you gain power, but you also humanize yourself. You know? It's I can tell you from experience, it is much harder to look at someone who has humanized themselves as an enemy than someone who has dehumanized themselves. Much, much harder. So any chance you get to humanize yourself, to humble yourself in front of your employees, take it. Doesn't mean you're not the boss anymore. It just means that they can respect you because you know when you're wrong. They can trust you to make good decisions because you know when you're wrong. Shift focus from self-importance to team success. That seems like a no-brainer, but can be difficult thing to do. Okay, especially when you're in a small business and you're fighting for every sale, you're fighting for every job that you do. It can be difficult to shift to that team focus because I have to make payroll, right? I have to make sure that this company is successful. I can't lay these people off. All those sentences still started with I, even though I put them as an outwardly focus. But sometimes the answer to those solutions is sitting in the mind of someone on your team. Maybe they're even talking about it when they're on a truck, on a ride to a job. But if you don't ever create that venue, that opportunity, that forum for them to speak up, they never will. Okay? Or if they do, it's going to be one of those, I told you so, or I knew that was going to happen. And that's a terrible thing to hear as a boss, right? That someone anticipated failure and wasn't willing to say anything. They anticipated that something wasn't going to work, but rather than speak up because of maybe it was because of an action I took or an action one of their supervisors took, that they weren't willing to say, that's not going to work, right? Because 9 times out of 10, that's going to be because they gave you a recommendation before and you didn't take it. Even though it may have worked, it wasn't the right thing, but you didn't take their advice, so why would they give it again? Why would they waste that effort? Lead with service and gratitude, prioritize other people, right? All right, reflection and call to action. Humility is something that is, like most everything we teach here, is a practice. It is something you have to intentionally put into your schedule, intentionally put into your reflection. Otherwise, it is just a good idea that goes away. If you are not intentionally putting effort into practicing humility, you will not become more humble. And that scale doesn't just sit in balance, right? You have interactions, make decisions every day. And whether you know it or not, or recognize it or not, you are either building humility or building your ego. That thing doesn't just sit there as you move through the day, as you move through your weeks. It is either you are putting those green weights or red weights out there, whether you know it or not. You just have to be practiced to make sure that you are putting the green weights out there and building that humility. Otherwise, the ego will take over. And ego is the enemy. Okay? I appreciate you guys being here tonight. That is the end of this class. Please let me know what you thought about this venue. I will tell you it is more difficult to teach in. I'm not digging it. But if you guys like this venue and want to do more classes here, we can do that. I'll just wear earplugs. Okay? Because it is distracting.
Give you a microphone.
What's that? I have a microphone. There's just no speaker.
Yeah.
But thank you for being